Hey, what's up everyone? Craig here from Soundiron, and in today's video I thought it would be cool to talk about composing for strings. So this is a piece of music that I wrote for the Hyperion Strings Ensemble trailer. This library has everything from the intimate to the astral, from the most delicate of strings to the most gnarliest of sound design. So let's go ahead and play this track, and then I'll show a little bit of how I composed and arranged this piece. And yeah, so let's go ahead and push play and then go from there. All right, so with this track, I called it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it has this very soft, very emotive beginning, but then at the end it shifts and just completely changes and goes from using the flatandos and some of these trills to really have a lot of movement and very emotive expressiveness. And then the next half is utilizing more of the aleatoric aspects of the library and the more sound design aspects. So as far as the sound design, I'm only using one track that's using some sound design, and right here, let's just go ahead and solo this so you can hear a little bit of how this sounds just by itself. So it's this kind of atmospheric sci-fi sounding drone. And then let's just go to the beginning. So with this, I just wanted to combine some different articulations to really give it a little bit of movement. I really like being able to have all these different types of articulations and layering them together to make it sound like there's more players playing different articulations on top of each other. Because if you just have players just maybe all playing sustains or just all doing trills, it can sound a little bit stale sometimes. So with this, I really wanted to layer some different articulations together. I like doing that, where maybe you might have some players doing like a flattando and then another one doing like a harmonic underneath it, or maybe just waving in some trills like I did in this piece. So let me solo the strings and then talk a little bit about this. So right here we have this flattando, just bringing it in. And then we have some low strings with the cello and the basses. You hear a little bit of harmonics, some cello melodies, bringing in some trills. And I think by doing this, it achieves a little bit more life in the piece. I think it's a great way to add life to anything that you're working on that requires strings, or if you're composing for strings. I think if we were to mute some of these, let's mute these trills and this harmonic sustain and listen to it again. Let's mute these tremolos too. Like, it still sounds nice, but it just sounds a little more mellow, I guess. A little bit more static, like just a plain pad. And I think if you were maybe scoring something that really required it to be a little less movement, something like this would be nice. But maybe even bringing in some of those harmonic sustains would be cool, just to bring those in, because it just adds this sort of very extra bit of delicateness to it. I'm gonna mute the cello. And even just that sounds really nice. You know, if you're doing something that you really wanted to be a little bit more dramatic, maybe you're scoring something that just really needed it to be like a pad type of effect, something like that would be cool. And then with the low strings, I'm using some legatos. I have the cello legatos, and I really love the sound of these. They just have this nice warm sound to them. And I also have these with the basses a little bit later. And one of the things I did was I used some MIDI modifiers in here to make it to where the basses play an octave lower than the cellos. So I can just kind of automatically have that really low, ominous sound, because normally most of the time when people are layering cellos and basses together, usually the basses are always an octave lower than the cellos. Love the sound of that. And then something that I really like to do as well is being able to layer these with the horns. I have some Hyperion brass elements in here, as well as some Venus choir and a little bit of our Apocalypse percussion, just to use some cymbals and some bass and toms for the big percussion hit that you hear in the middle where it transitions. So if you want to hear a little bit of the cellos, basses, and the horns together, let's check that out. Or if you want to hear just the horns. And one of the things I love about these horns, or all the brass elements in the Hyperion brass elements, is the ability to go really soft, but then be able to get a lot of bite out of it. And then we also have some of the tenor bones and the bass bones, if you want to hear these together. Really love the sound of that. And then if you want to hear a little bit of the Venus choir, it's using some articulations, which I just used to really just add as an extra layer in all of this. It's not really meant to be very in the forefront, but more just in the background, just adding that human element. So as you can hear for the first part of the track, it's really just mostly strings that are handling most of the work. A little bit of brass, just a little bit of horns kind of playing on top, sort of counteracting off of the cello legato lines, and then the choir adding that little bit of human element like I was mentioning earlier. And then this, with the percussion, it's mostly just adding some cymbal swells and stuff just to kind of embellish what's going on. So if we skip up here a little bit, let's check this out. Just that little bit of cymbals on top, and the brass you can hear in the background. So with the tenor bones and the bass bones, I'm just using the crescendo high articulation, which is just acting as sort of a swell into that next part, because you can hear if you're just playing these by themselves. It's a nice little crescendo. Then if we want to hear the bass. So for this next half, when it goes into the Mr. Hyde part of the track, I am using some of the cluster skitters and the cluster tremolos from the violins, first and second violins of the atonal sort of aleatoric aspect of the library. So if we want to listen to some of these by themselves, let's check these out. You can hear some of these eerie pizzicato spider articulations. And I love this stuff in the library. It's one of my favorite aspects. Especially if you've seen my composing a track in the style of Dead Space, I used a lot of this stuff because that library is just perfect for anything like that. Really cool. So let's have a listen to some of the cluster tremolos. You can hear some of these are more intense than others. Some a little bit more higher. Love that stuff. And then we also have some viola cluster sustains, so let's have a listen to some of these. Some cool little eerie bendy type of sounds. And these sound great when you play a couple different notes together, because since it's smaller groups of players that we recorded, being able to layer up a couple different types of performances, you can almost make it sound like there's even more players in the room, which is really cool. Really cool. So let's go ahead and just hit play from this part of the track onward, and then I'll just dissect it a little bit. So the ambience that you hear from the ambiences section of Hyperion Strings Ensemble is really adding this otherworldly sound design aspect to the second half of the piece. So if we solo that out, let's listen to just the strings. So we got some low cellos and basses. And then you can also hear I'm using some Oktobass in this. So this is the Oktobass legato. So let's check that out real quick for anyone who's interested. And if you haven't seen an Oktobass, you should definitely look it up. Just go ahead and Google Oktobass and you'll be blown away by the sheer size of one of those instruments. So you can hear as I'm going down in the octave, just keeps getting lower. And that's not pitched down, that's the actual instrument. And it's just insane what this instrument can do as far as range goes. So I'm just really using this underneath all of these low strings. So if you want to hear the Oktobass, the cellos, and the basses together, let's have a listen to that. So you can hear that Oktobass underneath. And one of the things I love about using an octobass underneath all of these orchestral strings is that normally you can use like a sub bass, or if you're just doing like a sine wave just to add that low end. The cool thing about having an octobass underneath all of this is because that instrument goes so low and captures a lot of that really low sub element, but still has that natural sound of the bow on the strings. So it's just not just a synth sub bass layered underneath it, but more of a real recorded instrument that still has that texture of a string player. So we have the first violins, second violins, and violas playing some different clustered articulations. So let's have a listen to just that by itself so you can hear how it sounds, how they're working off each other. So very faint cluster tremolos and some of those spidery pizzicatos. And then we have this last little cluster slide up right here. And that's just being used basically as a little crescendo to the very end. And then I got this little sub boom hit. So let's listen to all of this one more time. All right, so that about wraps up this video. If you like any of the sounds that you heard in this video, make sure to head over to soundiron.com and check out any of these libraries. We're doing a 50% off sale on our Symphonic collection. So if you want to check out any of these libraries and get them 50% off, now's the time. So thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this, as well as walkthroughs and other news. And we will see you in the next video. Take care.